Hello, welcome to Drawn to the Word today. Our story is the book of Ruth, and this is a short book in the Old Testament. I will draw for you a little sketch here today. And here is the person of Ruth, and she is carrying this basket that will be filled with grain, leftover grain that she picks up in the field. We'll get to that in just a second. But here's how the story goes. There was a lady named Naomi, and who married a man named Elimelech. And because there was a famine in their land, not enough food, they moved from Bethlehem, where they were from, and they went to the land of Moab. And while they were there, they had two sons. Their sons' names were Mahlon and Chilion. And these sons, they married. They married wives, women from the land of Moab, not from their home country. So their wives were foreigners. Well, Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died, and several years later, both of Naomi's sons died as well. So Naomi was left with her two daughters-in-law. One of them, whose name was Orpah, and the other's name was Ruth. And so here's where we get the person of Ruth. Can you guess what this is? You don't see too many of these around anymore in farm fields, but it's a shock of grain. Once they've cut the grain, they stand it up, tie it together, maybe not even tie it together, just lean it together so it can dry. So it will be good later on and it won't spoil. Well, so Naomi, the mom, Naomi, was left with her two daughters-in-laws, Orpah and Ruth, and Naomi decides she wants to go back to her home country near Bethlehem. And she tells her daughters-in-law to stay. Go back to their own land, to the land of Moab. Let's put a shadow here, makes it more interesting. And Orpah does, but Ruth says, no, wherever you go, I will go. I'm going to be faithful to you no matter what, Naomi. And it seems as though Ruth has began worshiping the true God of Israel now at this point as well. So she is this foreigner who wants to stay with Naomi and return to their land, to their homeland. Well, long story short, she does, and let's move from this. Now watch here. Up here, here's a painting of Ruth. You can see by my hand and pencil how large this is. Out in the field, and she's been collecting this grain. Long story short, Ruth ends up marrying a man who is a relative of their family named Boaz. And Boaz was out in the fields. He was taking the grain and harvesting it. And Ruth came along and was a helper there, gleaning or cleaning up what was left after the harvest had been done. You see all this taking place here. And so Ruth then marries Boaz, and they have a child together. A child who is actually going to become the grandfather of David, the one who would become king later on, King David. But this is interesting because Jesus, he's asked about his family in the Gospel of Mark. And instead of being connected by birth and through bloodlines, when Jesus is asked or told that his mother and brothers are waiting for him outside, he asks the question, who are my mothers and brothers? And he looks around at the crowd sitting around him, and he says, here are my mothers and brothers, these people all around me. And then he goes on and shocks the crowd by saying to them, whoever does the will of God is my mother and my brothers. This is my family, whoever does the will of God. It's not about who's born into the family, but rather the one who does the will of God. Boy, isn't that something? So what that means is, the good news for you today is that you are a part of God's family. Jesus has named you as part of his own family. And that is as good as it gets, because when you're a part of family for Christ, part of Jesus' family, he will never let you go. He will stand by you and defend you and care for you and forgive you and lift you up, raise you up, and call you back to his own, no matter what comes your way. Well, that's a promise today. And that promise belongs to you. God's peace.